Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Ohio Huntsman Podcast with your hosts, Jason, Jacob, and Jeff. And today we are all calling in because we're pretty much snowed in. I think pretty much most of the state got hit with this big snowstorm here. What is it, January 20th? So everybody's at home calling in to record a podcast. And so everybody's on the phone. Before we get into today's topic, I want to remind everybody that we still have shirts for sale. So we have the Eat Local Ohio Huntsman shirts. We also have hooded sweatshirts. So with this winter weather, if you're looking for something to stay warm, get yourself an Ohio Huntsman hoodie. With that, any other updates before we get into our topic you guys have?
No.
I got a quick one. I did pull a camera I had out at the farm out in eastern Ohio. And the biggest buck we had out there seems to have made it through muzzleloader. So hopefully
Nice.
he'll be around.
Oh, yeah, that's
Next
new
year.
to me. That's exciting news.
Yep. I mean, I had him on camera the Saturday or Sunday of muzzleloader. Or no, we were out there Sunday.
Yeah.
So I think I had him on camera the Saturday of muzzleloader. We were out there Sunday. We obviously did not harvest him, and the farm did not get hunted. So as long as he stayed home, so to speak, he survived muzzleloader season. And I can't imagine he would have wandered. I know no one else hunted that area of the farm for muzzleloader.
So you don't have after
I don't
muzzleloader
have
pictures
actual
of him.
proof, I guess. No. He survived at least 2 muzzleloader. I never got a
Okay.
picture of him after the season, but that's not uncommon. I mean, he didn't make himself super visible on camera to start with. So that's not shocking to me that I didn't get pictures of him after the season.
Mm-hmm.
I maybe only got 10 pictures of him all year.
Okay.
So he wasn't he's not a camera star.
You got some other trail camera news in that you got a nice little Christmas present related to trail cameras.
I did. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten to use it much. It's been a little bit of a hassle to get it up and running, but I got a cellular trail camera for Christmas from my wonderful wife. So I'm excited to get that and use that as a scouting tool going into the next season. I had some issues getting it firmware updated and getting it running, but it's all good to go. It's working, but it's not being used currently because I found out that where I wanted to use it, there's not enough cell service to use it. So I have to kind of move around. And the one downside of those type of cameras, if you hunt any type of rural area, those cell cameras have to have more cell service than what you have on your phone. Like my phone will pick up 3 bars of service somewhere, and the cell camera doesn't pick up hardly any. So
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah,
almost need cell service to get those to transmit pictures.
yeah. They that's what I've heard. They're kind of persnickety about the cell service, and a lot of them actually sell like antenna extenders or I guess they're extenders or maybe amplifiers because the internal antennas aren't that good. It seems like it's a design thing, right? They just haven't. They're trail camera companies trying to do cellular, whereas if they could optimize their antennas, like in your cell phone, right? If they spent more time developing the cellular antennas, that they would work better, right? I mean, your cell phone
Mm-hmm.
works, right? So why can't they replicate those antennas in your camera? I feel like
Yeah.
they'll get there. We're on the way there, but they're still kind of persnickety. So I'm excited about it just from the tech standpoint and being able to get those pictures, emailed to you or text messages, which is
Oh.
just kind of exciting. Cool new toy, I guess.
Yep.
Okay, well then we'll get into the topic. So what we wanted to do today is kind of do sort of our seasons in review. We did it was sometime before season started or early season. We did our goals for the 2018 season. So we're going to kind of rehash those goals, how we did on them, any other takeaways we had from the season, things that we learned this year, things that we're going to maybe implement next year based on happenings from this year. So I'll start. One of the things I wanted to do, one of my goals for the 2018 season was to start keeping a hunting journal. And I've done that. I haven't been perfect at it. There's a few hunts that I forgot or missed or whatnot. And if you remember, if you listened to that episode, I wasn't really using this as a tool, a hunting tool per se. It was more of I want to sort of jot down the memories, what I saw, how it went, what, that kind of thing, just as just a cool keepsake to have someday for my kids or just to look back on in the future. So I have been doing that. I guess that's all I have is I've been doing it and it's been going well. I've not been perfect at it, but I think I'm going to continue to do it. What do you guys got? Do you have one?
I mean, along those same lines for me, I said, that's something that I thought would be interesting or something that I might do. I, on the other hand, have completely failed at that. I did not keep a journal or any type of record of my hunts other than telling you guys about it. So unfortunately, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
So that's something I'll carry over, I guess, probably into this next year's goals is to maybe get in that routine. It's just hard for me to carve the time out to hunt. And then after I get home and have to get everything debriefed and unloaded and cleaned up, and then to sit down and type something up or jot something down when the kids are, wanting to play and whatever, I just struggled with it. So
Yeah.
I'll have to try and revamp that and figure out how I'm going to fit it in, because I definitely like the idea. I know I really get a lot of enjoyment of reading, other people's hunting stories down at our camp or cabin down in Southern Ohio. They did that at one point. They were jotting down, so-and-so went up behind the oil tank and saw this many deer or whatever. So just stuff like that.
Yeah. And I had intended to do it when I got back into the car before I headed home, but that hasn't happened at all because, as you know, right, you hunt and then it's like the hunt's over. I got to get home. I got some kind of family commitment. Got to get home. No time to do that. So mine's ended up being like after I get my daughter to bed, then I need to I try to remember to then go back and jot down the notes, or like the next morning before she gets up, that sort of thing. Because once she's up and the day's started, then there's no time for that. And then that's how I've forgotten a couple because I just didn't do that. And then it's, months have gone by and, the details are kind of fuzzy at this point and just didn't get done. So one of my other ones was like I wanted to get a more intricate knowledge of the properties we hunt. I haven't done anything special other than just try to pay attention to where I'm seeing beds, where I'm seeing travel paths a little bit. So I do feel like I've gained a little bit of knowledge on that, but I didn't do any specific sort of scouting. Wow, I really kind of enunciated my scouting there. I haven't done anything special though to sort of make that one. That one just kind of fell by the wayside. One I did do though is I wanted to try deer heart. So if you guys have been following on our social, Jeff, did you have any deer heart this year? I know Jake and I.
Not. I didn't have
Jeff
any.
did not. So Jake and I both tried deer heart for the first time this year and both really enjoyed it. I know Jake, you followed basically followed Hank Shaw's recipe in his book, right? His what was that, in Buck Moose?
I believe it was, yeah. It was either Hank Shaw's or I don't even remember at this point. It was either Hank Shaw's or it was out of the Steve Rinella book.
It was the one with the roasted peppers and he had the marinade, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was Hank Shaw's.
But yeah, I followed that and intended to serve it to all of us. I forget what we even had everyone over my house for, but whatever it was.
Trick or treat or something, I think.
Trick or treat. I think it was trick or treat. And it just, one thing led to another. Got late. Time for everyone to go home. We never ate it.
Yeah.
So it sat in the marinade much longer than I anticipated. When I did fry it up for lunch the next day, it was phenomenal. I absolutely loved it.
So I did not marinate mine. I just kind of cut mine into big chunks and grilled it, and it ended up being probably more on like the medium rare side, and it was good. I told my wife I felt like it was, at least this one I've got a sample size of one here so far. I do have another one in the freezer, but I felt like it was the most beef-like cut of venison I've ever had. You know, it just had that kind of steak, because I just did my regular steak seasonings, salt and pepper, and I think maybe a little garlic or something, and it turned out like the most steak-like or beef-like cut of venison I've ever had, and I same thing. I really enjoyed it. So I
ate two this year. Unfortunately, my wife doesn't venture into that bit of eating, so I ate them both myself. Basically, I think I gave my son a couple bites of the second one, and he liked it. But
he loved it, right? Yeah,
he loved it, but he likes just about everything.
Your 1-year-old.
My 1-year-old, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to clarify there that.
Oh yeah, my 1-year-old son. Yeah, I gave him little bits of it. And my second one wasn't quite as good as my first one. The marinade, I didn't follow the recipe exactly. I just tried to remember it, and it also didn't marinate as long. But still not bad by any means. It just wasn't quite as good. My first one, when I ate it, it was like, it blew my mind how good it was. Like you said, it's very beef-like. There is no gamey taste to it at all.
So you followed the marinade recipe in Hank Shaw's book and then just fried it in butter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have it's like a butter spray, basically. It's almost like it's like a spray can that is like a butter spray that I just sprayed in the pan and fried it up. I cut it into slices or whatever, like it says to do in the recipe.
Yeah.
And then I just fried it up, and yeah, it was really good.
Cool. All right. So does anybody have another one, or do you want me to keep going?
I can. Go ahead, Jeff.
All right. Well, I was going to go into trying to get a black squirrel this year to finish my Squirrel Grand Slam.
That's
Ohio Squirrel Grand Slam.
That's good, because that dovetails into one of my other ones. So when you're done, I can pick right up from there.
Which that didn't happen. I tried hard to get one, but where I had black squirrels at, my hot lead, I tried to hunt there a few times early season and never found one. And I was catching them on trail cameras, scouting for deer, and they disappeared from there. As they weren't showing up on the trail camera anymore either. So I'm afraid that probably a hawk or something has gotten the ones that I was hunting for. So I'll have to look somewhere else next year.
Yeah,
complete that Grand Slam.
I didn't see any black squirrels this year. Not that that's a thing that usually happens for me, but I didn't see any black squirrels this year. But that also, like I said, that sort of dovetails into one of my other goals, which was do more small game hunting. And so again, if you guys, listeners, have been following us on social, you've seen some squirrel hunting going on. And it's been quite a few years since I've done any squirrel hunting, and I've gotten back into it this year because it was one of my goals, and I've been loving it, man. It's an awesome time to just get out there and chase the tree ninjas. It's get a lot of shot opportunities. You move around more. You don't have to sit and be super still and freeze your rear end off. And I've been doing mine. It was all been kind of late season here, January time frame, after gun season. I think it was. I might have done one before muzzleloader, but then I've done 2 more squirrel hunts after muzzleloader, and just really been enjoying it. So I'm going to try to make that a. No, my first squirrel hunt was before muzzleloader because it was New Year's Day. I did a squirrel hunt New Year's Day. So I'm going to try and make that part of my hunting season every year, I think, going forward. So
yeah, I went with you on your last squirrel hunt. You and I went out together at the farm out in the eastern part of the state there.
Yep.
And I can vouch for the tree ninjas. The majority of the squirrels we did see certainly weren't standing still. They were doing their jumping about between tree to tree, and when you're not hunting them, you don't realize it, but when you're actually trying to shoot them, you realize how quick they really can be and how challenging it can be. So I didn't end up getting a squirrel this year. I just went out that one time, but I had fun. We were kind of pressed on time, so we didn't get it. We spent a lot of time in the wrong place, basically. We just didn't know. Once we got over to the spot where we probably would have had a lot more success, we were just pressed on time.
Yeah.
But it was nice to get out and do it. I can't remember the last time I squirrel hunted. I mean, it was probably when I was a kid, like 10 years old or younger, probably. I just never squirrel hunted for no reason, really. Just I haven't done it. So it was cool to get back into it and just kind of see. It's funny the different things you see when you notice about the woods when you're doing other things other than deer hunting. I've never, as funny as it sounds, I never knew what like a squirrel nest was. Like I'd seen them in the trees, but I never thought about it because it didn't have anything to do with deer hunting.
Right. Yeah.
And then when you're hunting squirrels, you start looking for them, and it's like, holy crap, there's 20 squirrel nests all within this tree stand that I've sat in and never seen any of them.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of interesting.
One cool takeaway from that squirrel hunt we did, it was not related to squirrels, but deer. We jumped a deer, or maybe, I don't know. We saw a few tails, in this woodlot that we were in. And when we got over there to where these deer were bedded down, you start following the tracks, which way did they go, sort of thing. And at one point, those tracks just sort of, it looked like ended. And it was like, well, how on earth, where did this deer go from here? And I don't know, Jake, how far was that? That was easy 12 feet, probably, more than that.
I was going to say 15.
Yeah.
Over not 8 foot, but probably 6 foot high.
I was going to say 4 or 5, because it was like at chest height, I thought, for me.
Chest
so it was
height, yeah, it might have been
4 or 5 4 or 5 feet off the ground, a down tree. This deer just, long jump. These tracks stopped, and then they started up on the other side of this down tree, which was 12 to 15 feet over there. And I just stood there and was just astounded by it was like this deer just grew wings. But, if you looked farther up there, the track started again. And the only thing I can figure is it just long jumped over that stuff. And it was just impressive. I was impressed.
Yeah. Because those deer weren't, the other thing is they weren't jumped. We didn't jump them like rabbits. We weren't right on top of them. They were well out in front of them.
Yeah.
Deer were, they were leaving the area, but they were not running full speed. They were just kind of trotting their way out of there. And
right.
It was just, so it's not like that deer was, fleeing necessarily for its life at that point, fight or flight. Right. It was just kind of getting out of there because it hurt us walking through the woods.
Yeah. So I think I've got one more, and I think that was my last one, and that was I wanted to try those tree step aiders this year. So I bought that nylon tubular webbing and made one for each one of my tree steps. It worked. I used them all season for my tree stand. I only ever took 3 steps into the woods because I made up what I lost in height by not carrying the 4th step by using these tubular webbing aiders, which like basically added another step to the bottom of my tree steps. And they worked. I'll probably modify them or try something different next season. Going up was great. Getting down was kind of a pain in that it's typically in the dark. you're kind of hanging there on the side of this tree, feeling around for something that can move, and you're trying to get your boot into this loop. Basically, that's what it is. You basically made a loop in this tubular webbing to step down into. It's like a sling, almost for your boot, and it was kind of hairy at times getting down out. Especially, like, there was one instance in particular that I'm thinking of where it had rained and then gotten cold, and I maybe left the tree stand up overnight or something, and so when I came back, those things had frozen into this shape. Like, they weren't wide open like they normally are. They had frozen into this kind of a tighter U where my boot had been, and it made it even harder to use them. So I've seen some where they use one long aider that you loop over the top of your step, and then it's long enough to then loop down. I might try something like that, or I don't know. We'll see. But I think I'm going to try something different next year. They worked, but they were kind of a pain at times. At the very least, I may, because I just put a piece of rope inside of them, inside the tubular webbing, to kind of keep the step open. I might try something, either a stiffer piece of rope, or I've seen people put like garden hose inside of them or garden hose outside of them, run the webbing through a piece of. I've heard that that soaker style hose where it's just like a porous hose and you lay it along your garden or whatever, and the water soaks out all along the length of the hose. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I've heard people using that because it's got that kind of rubbery texture on it, and then you run the webbing through the middle of that instead of putting something inside the tubular webbing. Might try that. Just something to tweak them to make them a little more usable, because there were times where it was like, man, this is kind of crazy. But that was it. I think for me, those were my main goals, I think, that I wanted to do. So what do you guys have left on your list?
I have one that I had was introduce or take someone new hunting. I sort of did that. Not like I originally intended when I wrote the goal. I had some friends in mind that I had planned on taking hunting specifically, and neither one of them were able to go. Or the one is a hunter. He just I've invited him a couple times, and he's wanted to come with us down to deer camp and has never been able to make it. Again, this year just didn't work with schedules. The other friend I had in mind, I've tossed the idea around, but he's just got other competing hobbies that have kind of kept him busy. But I did take my daughter hunting, so that was kind of cool. I can't say it was much of a hunt per se. I mean, she was 3.5 at the time.
Yeah, I was going to say, for listeners' sake, she's only 3.5. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I took her. We sat in the ground blind. I knew going into it that there was little to no chance a deer would come by, but she enjoyed it. She had a fun time. She liked to take the binoculars and look for the deer. We had fun, took a lot of snacks. And I did that earlier in the season when it wasn't super cold, obviously.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It was a cool experience. It was fun. I'll probably take her out again next year. Same thing, just put her in a ground blind, and it means a lot to her to go hunting with Daddy, because I leave a lot and she never gets to go.
Yeah.
So that was cool. Another one I had was kind of two that kind of went together, but not really. I had one goal of getting a mature deer before gun season, and the reason for that is it takes some pressure off of gun season. I was able to harvest a deer with my bow this year prior to gun season. I wouldn't necessarily classify it as a mature deer, though. So I did get meat in the freezer, but it wasn't the mature deer that I was looking for necessarily. So it was nice to have deer, and then I ended up having a successful gun season. In general, all of us down there had a very good year. We saw a lot of deer. Our hunter numbers were way down where we hunt, so that left a lot of deer for the rest of us that were hunting.
Yeah, we had this was one of the better years for gun week that I can remember in a while.
Yeah, Yeah, the weather was really better than it's been. And the past, like you said, the past couple of years, it's been super warm and rainy.
Well, we had the rain opening day, but
Yeah, we had the rain opening day, but then it cooled off nice. And
yeah, and we got a little bit of snow down there, and
right. And then I had one of my goals was to shoot a turkey. I've never actually shot a turkey, but I also don't fall turkey hunt, so I didn't really have a chance to execute that goal yet since we set these goals.
yeah,
I guess that was more of a 2018 goal that was going to happen in 2019.
Right.
So come spring turkey season, my goal is to harvest my first turkey.
yeah, that one's still TBD.
Right. And my last one I had was public land deer, which I was successful in doing. Again, down at our hunting camp, we have a pretty good portion of the land we hunt is public down there. And I was able to harvest my buck for this year down at the hunting camp on public land.
Yeah, cool. All right,
Yeah.
Jeff.
My primary goal this year was to target and harvest a mature buck, which I sure tried to do.
And just to kind of recap, you had sort of defined that as in the moment, something that looked mature, that kind of got you excited. You didn't have like I'm going to shoot a 5-year-old or anything like that, right?
No age or point or score. I was just going to kind of look at my trail camera photos, find out what the biggest deer around were, and try to harvest one of those. I wasn't very successful in finding big deer. Most of the places I hunt, the large deer weren't around. I wasn't catching them on trail camera. I would say the two largest deer I saw this year were both two largest bucks that I saw this year, both when I was tracking a wounded deer. During November, I had shot a large doe. When I got to the point and found the arrow, I determined that the shot probably wasn't great. So
that was down at the cabin, right?
Yes.
That was during our rut weekend or our rut vacation, right?
Yeah. During the rut weekend. So backed off of it. When I went back to look for that doe, I jumped a pretty large buck.
And
I not shot that doe, I probably would have been sitting in the stand and had that buck come by.
Yeah. I think I saw that buck I think that was the next morning. I had one come across, it didn't come across the street. It was in the bottom as I was walking down the road, and I just saw it go up the hillside on the other side of the road from where you had seen it, or where you had seen a big buck, and this was a big buck going up the hill, and I can vouch it was a big giant buck.
Yeah. The other large buck I saw was helping Dad track a deer. We tracked that deer a long ways, and I came up out of a ravine to a cornfield, and there was a monster buck standing 10 yards away. Didn't pay much attention to me. I didn't have any bow or anything on me, but didn't pay much attention to me, and eventually walked off. But it was huge.
That was at the property behind his house, or where was that at?
Yep, that was behind his house.
Okay.
So that buck wouldn't have been on property you could have hunted, because I believe, if I remember the story right, you guys were tracking that deer off of the property onto neighbors.
Correct. Yeah. But that buck was probably legitimately a booner. It was a very, very large buck. I passed on a couple of bucks, only one that was of any real size at all. Everything else was 1-year-old for sure, spikes and very small basket deer. During the rut weekend at the cabin, I passed on a buck, and it was kind of a cool experience because he was larger, and he hung around within 10 to 15 yards of my stand for, maybe 10 minutes, and I just watched him feed, and that was a cool experience.
And you thought that might have been the deer that I shot opening day of gun season, right?
Yeah, I think it might have been the deer that you shot opening day of gun season, because I pulled out my phone and videotaped that deer, walking around feeding, and it looked very similar.
Yeah.
So definitely possible. I guess I do still have a little bit of time in the season this year to maybe get a mature buck, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'll probably go out one or two more times before season ends, so we'll see what happens.
Nothing really patterned though, right? It would just happen. One would just happen to walk by, sort of thing, right?
Yeah. Nothing patterned. Yeah, one would just have to happen to walk by.
Okay.
I think my other goal was to try to expose my wife to some additional game meat and get her excited about, eating more venison, more cuts of venison and than other game, squirrel, dove, wild turkey, get her eating it and enjoying it more. I think I was pretty successful in that. We cooked up the wild turkey that I got last spring.
Mm-hmm.
We cooked it like pulled pork and ate it like pulled pork with barbecue sauce on it.
Yeah.
And she really enjoyed that, so that was a big win. I'm working on getting enough squirrel to make a squirrel recipe we're interested in making.
What's that recipe? Is it a secret family recipe, or can you share the recipe?
I don't know exactly all of because it kind of is a secret family recipe, but it's I'm basically going to cook squirrel like chicken wings.
Okay.
I don't know the exact recipe because it is kind of a family recipe for chicken wings that we're going to try to convert into squirrel wings, if you will.
I see. Well, if people are looking for a recipe, I know Steve Rinella's new cookbook has a squirrel hot legs, like, basically buffalo wings, but with squirrel legs.
Yeah.
It's got a recipe in there. If you're looking to do something like that, I think I shared a recipe from the Modern Carnivore. I think it's Modern Carn or Mod Carnivore or something.com. They've got a recipe for squirrel hot wings or squirrel hot legs or whatever, buffalo squirrel legs, if you want to, whatever you want to call it. But that's also something I want to try at some point.
Yeah, and that's where I originally got the idea, was from the Steve Rinella Meat Eater cookbook.
Okay.
And that also was done a lot, that cookbook, for getting my wife excited about trying some new game meat. So I kind of succeeded, not as much as I would have liked to. I wanted to try to get her interested in eating dove, but the couple times I went out dove hunting, I was not very successful. So
okay,
put a kink in that plan.
I was gonna say, like, I would be surprised that she didn't like dove, but it sounds like you didn't get any dove to try.
Yeah.
So
that kind of, makes it difficult. So I think that was all of my goals.
Okay.
So yeah.
So before we sort of sign off, do you guys have any other takeaways from anything you learned from the 2018 season? Anything you're already thinking about implementing for next year? Anything you're excited for going into 2019?
For me, I feel like I got a little bit better understanding of the farm out in eastern part of the state and kind of how the deer are using at least the one woodlot.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of excited going into next year to try and do a couple different sits with, I have a climber stand, so I have a little bit of leeway as to what tree I'm going to climb. So try and get a couple different access points. I'm going to try and get in the woods different, just to try different things. Because I know, I mean, it's pretty clear where they bed. There's a thick bottom that's been timbered, and then all the tops were kind of just left there, and it's grown into a jungle. So I know the deer are bedding down in there. So it's just a matter of trying to figure out how to catch them coming and going without bumping them out.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of excited for next year because I feel like I got a little bit better understanding of how they're using the bedding and how they're coming and going and what routes they're using. With it being farm country, it's not a whole lot of terrain to direct them, but there is enough terrain where you can pick some spots. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you mentioned your climbing stand. This was the first year using the climber. So any takeaways or things that you're going to do differently next year with the climber, or things that you liked about the climber?
I mean, every time I use it, I get a little more comfortable with it. The first time you climb a tree with a climbing stand, it's nerve-wracking and it doesn't feel right. But the more I use it, the more comfortable I get with it. My only takeaway is I'm not by no means a big guy, but I'm also not small. I'm 6 foot tall, weigh just under 200 pounds. But I feel a little bit confined in the stand, especially when you get into, the rut, when you're trying to have, rattling antlers and a grunt tube and doe estrus bleats, and there's, all your calls. Yeah. I found myself kind of getting up the tree, but then kind of fumbling around with where do I put everything? And plus I have to have my bow, and it feels kind of tight quarters. So I'm going to try and maybe figure out a way to get more of that stuff hung up or refined as to where it's going to go when I'm up there.
Right.
Every time I try something different, I try putting my pack on this side of the stand versus that side, or do I hang the pack from the stand or from the tree? Where does my bow go? Do I hang my bow? Do I hold my bow? Depends how long I'm sitting there. You don't want to hold your bow for hours and hours and hours. And then I know at one point I had to pee, so I set my bow down on a hook, and then the process of taking the bow off the hook, I had a rattling bag on that same hook, and I knocked the bag down all the way to the ground.
Yeah, I think we told that story when
you're approaching at the time, so it was just a mess.
Yeah, I think if you want to hear that story, that was our rut weekend, right?
Yes, yeah, that happened the rut weekend, yeah.
Yeah, so you can go, I don't know what episode number that is, but you can go back and sort of hear that full story in that episode. You also said
go ahead.
Upgrading the carrying system for that, right? You had mentioned better straps and maybe a hip belt so that you can maybe get in farther with it.
Yeah. The straps, I just used the straps that came with it. It's a Summit tree stand, and not that the straps are bad or cheap necessarily. They're fine. They're just not made for comfort. So yeah, something a little more durable, wider strap to be able to really get the up on my back, and then maybe, like you said, a hip belt to also help keep the weight up, because I just found that the stand would hang and kind of hang low, and then if I was stepping over logs or something, my feet would catch the teeth part that bites into the tree, and it was digging up my ankles.
Yeah. So
I have to find a way to get that stand kind of really up on my back to keep it away from my feet, especially if I'm, going up a steep incline or stepping over a log or something. And that's when I kind of noticed it. So it's just refining it and playing around with it, figuring out what works and what doesn't.
Sure.
Which that's every time I hunt. I'm figuring out what I like, what I don't like, what am I using, what am I not using.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I also, that just kind of reminded me another thing that I tried this year for the first time, which we did a whole episode on that. It's one of the things we were trying or whatever, but was that nose jammer stuff.
Oh yeah, how did that work?
It didn't.
Didn't have
I
didn't
can't
have a
say
good
it.
experience with it, huh?
No, well, I don't know. I can't say that anytime I used it, I never saw deer. So I can't say that I got winded by deer. Like
Okay.
I sprayed the nose jammer and then the deer winded me. I just
Right.
never saw deer. They didn't even come into, like, I never saw them. So
Interesting.
that could be bad luck, or they could be smelling that stuff and not coming. I don't know.
So
Um,
you didn't use it every time you hunted.
no,
Okay.
no. I used it on different occasions when I'd remember it or whatever. When I
Right.
had it, when it got to be the rut, I primarily would use, a urine-based scent, scent drag or scent wicks or that kind of stuff. So I didn't use nose jammer then because I didn't really want to cover up the urine scent. I wanted them to smell that blowing in the wind or whatever. But early season, I used it, and every time I used it, I never saw a deer. But
And how were you using it? Were you using it like were you just spraying your boots with it, or how were you using it?
I sprayed my boots prior to walking in, and then I also sprayed it like on the tree, so to speak,
Okay.
like right behind me or whatever, like on the side of the tree, so that in theory, anywhere my human scent was blowing, that would blow.
I see.
Or I'd spray it, up once I got up in the tree, I'd spray it on some branches and leaves if there was anything around me that I could spray it on.
Okay.
Whether that's the right way to use it, I don't know. Doesn't really tell you. It's
Yeah.
not like there's directions. It just says basically to spray it as a cover scent kind of thing.
Right. Okay.
I mean, it's a pretty potent flowery smell. It's kind of the best way I can explain it.
Right.
So it's definitely not a normal scent to where the deer would smell it, at least not in the areas I hunt, like on a regular basis. Which I don't know that it's supposed to be, but it's definitely powerful, and it is a different scent than anything I've smelled in the areas we hunt.
Right. Like your more traditional kind of cover scents, like your pine or your dirt or earth or whatever. Right. Those are kind of more traditional cover scents, if you will.
Right, right. It's certainly not that. It's very floral, flowery, what you wouldn't assume would be a hunting scent.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, I don't know. I can't say that it doesn't work. It's not like I saw a deer come in, at 100 yards away, catch my wind, and bust out when I had sprayed that. I just never saw deer at all.
Right.
But that's also not in a lot of the areas that I hunt. I don't have huge deer populations, so I don't see every deer I sit in the woods. Every day. I don't.
Right. It's not
Honestly,
uncommon to sit and not
right.
see something.
Right. It's honestly more uncommon to see something than to not see something.
Right.
Not that I'm complaining that the deer densities are too low. It's just I'm not in my properties that I'm able to hunt are not thick with deer. They're probably what I would say would be healthy deer populations.
So are you going to try and use it again next year, or are you done with it? What are your thoughts?
Probably because I still have some, I'll probably play around with it.
Okay.
Maybe more on my how's a good way to put this? I might use it, on my not major hunts. So like my rut hunts, I'm probably not going to use it, but I didn't use it this year. Opening day, I probably won't use it. The times I think I'm going to see the most deer, I might toy around with it, especially if I get a deer early to where I can be more selective or play around more.
Sure.
If I maybe if I see a non-mature deer coming in and I have it accessible, maybe I'll spray some of it and see if that deer, what it does, if it's downwind. I don't know. I might see what I can do with it. But
right.
If I get on if I get a big buck patterned, I'm probably not going to play around with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, do you guys have any other Jeff, do you have any takeaways, anything you learned, anything you want to implement for next year?
Well, I think next year I'm gonna try the same thing of really targeting a mature buck. I enjoyed it, I enjoyed it and didn't enjoy it. It seems like when you're targeting mature bucks, you're doing a lot of hunting and not seeing anything because a lot of times, it's that mature buck is the only deer that's coming through that.
Yep.
It's you either see that deer or nothing. So I think I'm excuse me, gonna try again next year to really get after targeting mature bucks, and I think I'll be a little smarter next year with it. When a spot goes cold, I'm not going to push it as much as I did this past year. You see that one big buck here, and it's okay. I'm going to hunt there, and even though the trail cameras have gone cold or whatever, the deer sightings have gone cold, I'm still going to sit there and try it. And I think that wasn't a good plan. I think I need to be more flexible in my planning.
Yeah.
So I also, kind of learned a lot, because I watched a lot more deer this year, does and small bucks, than I have in the past. And, I learned a lot about basically how much you can get away with. How much noise, even with a deer close to you, you can make and scent. I had a mature doe, 5 yards downwind of me, and that deer didn't spook. Now that could have been that my scent was blowing over top of it. I wasn't in a tree stand, or it could have just been luck, but I thought that was a pretty cool experience to have that deer so close, and it never spooked, it walked away and actually walked back, and just feeding, and then finally walked away again. So I think next year I'm going to have the same goal. I think I'm going to try to target does a little harder during gun season. I would say that I'm a little low on meat this year. We'll see how it lasts me for the year, but I would say I'm a little low compared to in years past. So we'll see, and we'll see how I feel come next year. If I, run out of meat and, I may have a different opinion come next year.
Okay. I'll put this out. If anybody has a good cough remedy, let us know. Jeff's had this lingering cough for a while now, and so let us know. Hit us up with your best cough remedy, because I know Jeff's suffering with that. So, and you'll have to forgive us on the on the audio. It's just people get sick, and we got to keep the podcast coming. So for me, I will. I guess I really enjoyed this season. We had like we said, we had a really good gun season. It's been different with doing the podcast and kind of trying to document and share things to social this year, which we haven't done in the past. So there's been a learning curve there, just what works, things that I thought were going to work that didn't, things that need refined, just to be able to better share the information, get the information out to social, and remember things, document things so that we can talk about them on the show, and recording down at the cabin, because that was something we tried to do this year, and some things worked, some things didn't, forgetting stuff that you needed, or not having time to get to it till 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And, it was kind of, everybody's exhausted, but we've got to do this podcast. not complaining at all, but just like that was something that I learned that like we might need to, if we're going to do recordings at the podcast, or let me try that again. If we're going to do podcasts while we're hunting, we're going to just kind of have to think through the logistics of how to make that work and how to make sure we've got time for that sort of thing. I think I may sort of venture into the mature buck realm next season. We'll see. I don't know. It's great to shoot a big giant buck, but I'm also not super particular about it. I was super happy with the deer I shot this year. It was by no means a monster buck, but it was a nice 6-point buck and really enjoyed it. Got a lot of good meat off of it. So we'll have to see how I feel next season. I don't know. It might be kind of a spot of the moment, spur of the moment kind of decision. Like, yep, that one looks good sort of thing. We'll have to see. I don't know. I think, always kind of tweaking and tuning gear as the season gets closer. I'll probably come up with the new list of things that I'm going to try or try to implement, and just really excited for what 2019 has in store for the podcast. We've started, I'm sure most of you have heard the episode that we did with Mike Tonkovich with the Division of Wildlife, and we've got plans to do more of that. I think we're going to shoot to try and do one of those a month or so. And so really excited for that sort of collaboration. Let us know what kind of questions and kind of topics you want us to talk with Mike about, because we're gonna make time to talk to him. So it's been great so far, and we've just got a lot of good things in store or in the works for 2019 as far as the podcast goes. So I think with that, anything else you guys want to mention before we shut this one off?
I don't think so. I think that about covers it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Jake,
I think I'm good. Just kind of looking back. I mean, just thanks to all the loyal listeners.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, our last episode with Mike was kind of a big thing for us. We put a lot of time and effort into that episode and thought and, making that collaboration, and we're looking forward to continuing that. But thanks to our listeners, people that have been around since the beginning, not that we've been doing this for years and years, but
right.
I mean, we started with only a couple people that gave us the time out of their day to listen. So
yeah,
thanks to everyone that's sharing, telling their friends. We're enjoying doing it. Keep spreading the word. Our goal is to, get the information and get good information out to the hunters in Ohio. So.
Yeah. And it continues to grow. And like Jake said, we really like getting the feedback. We've been getting good feedback. People are enjoying the show. So we're going to keep doing them. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then I think we'll sign off here. As always, subscribe to the show. That's the best way to make sure you're getting notified of new episodes. We do a new one every Tuesday, or we release them every Tuesday, one a week. We've also got an email newsletter that you can sign up for. There'll be a link to that in the show notes. That's basically new episodes and any kind of, if we're doing a giveaway or anything like that. If you've signed up for that newsletter and you haven't been getting them, check your spam folder. We've been finding that for some reason people's spam filters have been a little overzealous with the emails. I'm not sure how to keep those from going into spam, but if you've signed up for the newsletter, or you do sign up for the newsletter, check your spam folder. Make sure that the Ohio Huntsman emails aren't going into spam. You can just mark them as not spam, and then they'll come into your inbox then after that. Follow us on social. So we're Ohio Huntsman on Facebook, Ohio Huntsman Podcast on Instagram. We're always posting, what we're up to, interesting news articles, doing Instagram stories, that kind of thing. So it's a good way to keep up to date with what we've got going on. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we've still got our Ohio Huntsman Eat Local shirts. So get yourself a shirt, a long sleeve shirt, and we've even got hoodies and women's and youth sizes in the t-shirts. So with that, if you guys don't have anything else, we'll shut her down.
The only other thing I do have to add, and I've been meaning to say it the last couple episodes, but I can vouch the Ohio Huntsman's hoodies, they are very, very warm. So with the cold weather, those hoodies, it's one of the, if not the warmest, one of the warmest hoodies that I own. So I would check them out.
Yeah, I don't have one yet. I need to get one, but yeah, Jake has been raving over the warmth of those hoodies. So get yourself a hoodie. All right. Anything else?
No,
I'm good.
Cool. All right. I want to thank everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.